Hello, good morning students. Please subscribe the channel, drop a like, share and comment. This is Shree Vishnu Art Press Publications exercise number 11 and 12 on the speed of 90 words per minute. Start. However, this fact is sought to be distinguished by the respondents on the ground that it was an appointment in an autonomous body and therefore it will not amount to any regular recruitment as understood under the absorption rules. We are unable to accept this stand in the counter affidavit inasmuch as the very letter of appointment of Shiv Prakash Sharma itself refers to Senani Kalyan Parishad to be governed by the government order dated 23/12/2001 and absorption has been acknowledged on account of Shiv Prakash Sharma being a retrenched employee. Thus, there is no doubt that the absorption of Shiv Prakash Sharma was clearly on account of his retrenchment after he had withdrawn his writ petition. So far as the status of the Senani Kalyan Parishad is concerned, a reference to the office memorandum dated 12 to 1973 issued by the government of Uttar Pradesh would clarify the position. In clause 4 of the said memorandum, it has been categorically stated that the Senani Kalyan Parishad shall be a government institution. In our considered opinion, the said organization, therefore, being a government institution as described in the office memorandum itself, negates the arguments advanced on behalf of the respondents that it was governed as a separate entity and autonomous body and not a government department. The absorption of Shiv Prakash Sharma was in a government institution. As such, no distinction can be drawn on that count insofar as the case of the appellants on parity for absorption is concerned. Coming to the question of applicability of the 2003 recession rules, suffice it to mention that the issue of absorption had already been raised immediately upon the corporation being wound up in the year 1999. Thus, the status of retrenchment was already being faced by the appellants and they had already raised their claims much prior to the enforcement of the recession rules 2003. The said fact is also fortified by the fact that the interim order was issued on 25/5/2000 directing the state government to consider the same. Consequently, the entire exercise had already commenced and the state government having failed to take a decision, the rights of the appellants had already crystallized. The adjudication whereof has now been made under the impugned judgment. In such a situation, the conclusion drawn by the learned single judge that since the employees have been retrenched after the recession rules 2003 nowhere affects the rights of the appellants, whereas in fact the appellants were already facing retrenchment and they were entitled for consideration of their rights accrued earlier, as already pointed out in the judgment of Vinod Kumar Kushwaha and other judgments in the connected writ petitions. Learned Standing Counsel for the state also informs the court that the aforesaid status of retrenchment and its effect has been discussed in a later decision of this court of a division bench after considering the impact of the earlier judgment in this regard, and in this view of the matter also the appellants would not be entitled to any such benefits. The primary contention which was canvassed on behalf of the appellants and writ petitioners was that insofar as scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBC candidates are concerned, the prescription of a cut-off date for the production of caste certificates is wholly superfluous and of no significance whatsoever. It was submitted that a caste certificate is essentially a recognition of a status already obtained and held by a candidate belonging to the aforementioned three categories. It was sought to be contended that the caste certificate was not a document conferring a particular status. Elaborating upon this submission, it was submitted that a candidate belonging to the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, or for that matter, the OBC category acquires that status by virtue of belonging to a particular caste, category, or group. The certificate, therefore, it was submitted was in essence a recognition or certification of an already existing status. In this view, learned counsels submitted that even if the caste certificate was submitted after the last date prescribed in the advertisement, the same could not be refused. It was further submitted that the prescription of a last date for submission of such a certificate clearly did not prescribe to any rationale, inasmuch as a holder of the said certificate belonged to that particular category even before the date prescribed in the advertisement and even thereafter. It was then submitted that such a prescription, being read into the provisions of an advertisement or recruitment notice, would not only be irrational and arbitrary, but also violative of the constitutional guarantees enshrined in Articles 14, 15, and 16 of the Constitution. Insofar as question number 3 is concerned, the issue itself came to be formulated in light of the submission advanced by learned counsels that there was no repugnancy between the creamy layer standards stipulated by the state and the union government. It was sought to be demonstrated before us that the benchmarks formulated by the union government were lower than those prescribed by the state, and therefore, merely because the certificates produced were with reference to appointments to posts under the government of India, the same could not be discarded by the state respondents. The learned Chief Standing Counsel appearing for the state drew our attention to the provisions of the advertisement to contend that all participating candidates had been put to adequate notice that a caste certificate was to be obtained and submitted in a prescribed format. He further contended that the advertisement not just prescribed time limits within which a caste certificate on the prescribed format was to be submitted but also stipulated the consequences of a certificate not being submitted within the time fixed thereunder. He further sought to highlight the fact that for 1865 vacancies which came to be advertised, the board received as many as 41,000 applications. It was his submission that in the recruitment process, as many as 391, 37, and 503 vacancies stood identified as being reserved for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBC candidates respectively.